Study guitar online with Berklee's renowned faculty. Download your free guitar handbook now and discover how Berklee Online can help you become a better guitar player.
My name is Butwin here for Premier Guitar. So today's video is going to go over the mechanics behind string bending. We're going to talk about how to keep your bends in tune, some different types of bends that you can use, and then I've got two exercises that are simple but very effective at helping you put all of this into practice and making sure that you're mastering this technique from fundamentals all the way to wherever you want to take it. And as a bonus at the end of this video, make sure you stick around. I'm going to bring back the intro track, but this time I'm going to leave some space in between lines to allow you to practice some of your string bending ideas within the context of a track. First up, we're going to talk about the mechanics of string bending. When you grab your guitar, pay attention to where you put your thumb. Now, I naturally wrap my thumb around the fretboard. You might be someone who leaves their thumb towards the back of the fretboard more often than not, and that's okay, especially if you're doing bar chords like that. However, if you try to bend strings, as you might have noticed, with your thumb on the back of the neck, it's possible, but it's very difficult to be accurate and stable, which are two things you really want to be when bending strings with your thumb on the back of the neck. So I would suggest to cheat your thumb around the edge of the fretboard just a little bit. You don't have to go crazy with it, but get it into a position where you feel anchored for the next portion, which is what fingers and parts of your wrist and arm are actually going to be moving and making the string bend. So now that we've got an anchor point, we can actually bend a note. And if you notice, while my fingers are moving, what's really happening here is a lot of wrist movement. So this allows you to be very stable and very accurate with when and how far you're bending the string. So instead of just pressing with your fingertips, we're actually moving your entire hand and wrist. Now, it's not a huge movement, but there's a lot of strength in your wrist when you compare it to actually pressing something with just your fingertips. So the next part of mechanics we need to talk about is what fingers you're actually using. Now, you'll notice in the first example I gave you where I'm bending this note, I'm using 3 fingers to bend that one note. Of course, you can do that. Commonly, that's where we are as guitar players. We oftentimes are on that 3rd finger bending notes, but you could also do it with 2 fingers, like that. And yes, you could even do it with your index finger. You'll notice though, the fewer fingers you have on that string you're bending, even when you're anchored in the right place with all your mechanics, it becomes more difficult. So next we need to talk about accuracy and tuning when it comes to your string bending. This is probably the most important aspect of learning how to properly bend strings. On the guitar, if your guitar is in tune and set up properly, we have frets that keep basically everything we do right in tune. It's not like a cello or violin or fretless bass where you can actually have a lot of leeway as to where you put your hand on the fretboard, which can affect tuning. However, when you start to bend notes, all the responsibility for keeping those notes in tune falls right back on you, the player. So let's take a look at how that would work. If I wanted to play this line with a bend as opposed to fretting those 2 notes, I have to make sure that when I bend that note, I am landing right where I need to be. Now make sure you stick around because I have some exercises that are going to help you do that later on in the video. But you can imagine if my goal is to play this, but I play something like this, I just went right past the note. So this requires some very critical listening. And I will admit, when you are not playing over a track or with another guitar player or another instrument, it can be very difficult to hear whether or not you're in tune because you don't have any reference. So what I would suggest is to practice this with someone or some type of a backing track. So again, remember, stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to have a backing track for you to practice this with. But whether you are playing with someone or a track or not, start to listen to what you're playing and make sure that what you're playing sounds like it's in tune. So next up, we're going to talk about different types of bends. And the first two are single note bends. And these are a half step bend and a whole step bend. This is exactly what you think it is. If you want to go a half step, instead of fretting, you can do that. Or if you want to go a full step, you can go a full step with the bend. But again, just like I said in the last section, this is where listening becomes very important because you have to know where to stop. I could easily go from here past where I want to if it's a half step bend. But just keep in mind, you've got those options. Now, of course, you can go beyond a whole step if you want. You can go somewhere in between a half step and a whole step if you want a really interesting kind of out of tune effect. But generally speaking, you're going to be looking at half step bends, whole step bends, and sometimes maybe something slightly beyond a whole step bend if you're getting really crazy. Now, the next two types of bends are going to use more than one string and more than one note at the same time. The first one is something called a unison bend. And what you're doing is you're going to take two notes, two different notes, and bend them into unison. Unison means that you've got two of the same note happening at the same time. So you can hear at the beginning, it's two different notes, but the goal is to bend the B string in this case all the way up to my other fretted note. So the magic in a unison bend is not really when you arrive at that unison point, it's the journey the bending note takes to get there. So listen. You get some really cool dissonance that happens as that string is bending up to where you want it to go. And this is where all the tuning stuff we're talking about comes into play. And it can be a really interesting effect. Now, if you notice, what we're doing is we're starting to employ all sorts of different things we've already talked about. I got my thumb wrapped around. I am using two fingers to bend this string because my first finger is actually on the high E string and I'm bending the B string. Have some fun with that dissonance as you're bending into the unison note. So the next type of bend I'm going to show you has many variations, but this one is basically bending into a major triad. So we're going to go to an E chord. Yes, I could fret it just like that, but another cool way to get there is you're bending that G string. So I'm fretting at the 12th fret, B string and the E string, and then on the G string, I'm using three fingers, anchoring my thumb, and I'm bending that G string up to hit that major third we're looking for there. So, of course, again, same three notes as that, but a really cool effect that you get. Now, again, though, remember, if I go beyond that note, it's not going to sound good, and it's not going to be what I'm intending to play. So you have to listen, and you will find that sweet spot with your bend. And the guitar is going to tell you when you hit that. You can hear it. It starts to resonate in a really nice way when you get in tune and hit that E chord. So this leads us to our first exercise, and I kind of touched on this in a couple of the previous sections. What I want you to do is pick a reference note. In this case, I'm going to play a B, but then I'm going to drop back and I'm going to bend to that beat. And what I'm doing is I'm checking myself. I'm checking the pitch with that fretted B, and then I'm going to drop back 2 frets and do a whole step bend into that B. So I'm at the 12th fret on the B string. There's your fretted B, and if I drop back 2 frets and I bend into it, you can hear when you're on pitch. So that's the exercise I want you to do. So the second exercise is going to build on the first exercise, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult. This time, what I want you to do is we're going to emulate this a whole step again. However, instead of bending into the note like this, which is what we did with the reference pitch in the first exercise, this time the goal is going to be to bend the note before you pick it and have it be right on. And when you get really good at it, there should be almost no perceptible difference between fretting 2 notes like that and you can see sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. It's very difficult to be accurate. It's squirrely. It's almost there, but it's not quite there because I need to practice it. Try this though, because what you're doing here is not necessarily something you're going to actually use in a song, but it's muscle memory. If you can bend to a note and have it already be in tune before you've heard it, it makes string bending in context of a solo or a song or a part that much easier. So as promised, we're going to revisit that jam track from the beginning of the video, and I'm going to leave space for you to add your ideas and practice some of these string bending techniques. If you want to keep it simple, just play something in your D minor pentatonic scale and have fun. Don't worry so much about formulating a solo or what you're playing. As a whole, just practice some of these string bending techniques, practice being in tune, in time, and have fun. Once again, my name is Tom Butwin here for Premier Guitar. Thanks so much for checking out this lesson. Make sure you explore the rest of the things that Premier Guitar has to offer on this channel, whether it be gear reviews, other lessons just like this, or the famous rig rundowns. There's something for everybody who plays guitar. Have fun, keep playing, and I will see you in the next video.